Thank you, Jennifer. Clearly a lot of discussion happening here in Berlin, but also around the world. Thank you very much for your participation. It is now my pleasure to reintroduce and to also welcome a new speaker to the stage today. So we've already had very powerful remarks from the Minister Svenja Schulz and also Secretary Kwasi Kwarteng. It is my absolute pleasure to introduce Patricia Espinosa, and you are absolutely welcome. Patricia is the Executive Secretary of the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, commonly known as UNFCCC. Patricia, you are very, very welcome to this panel. So we will consider ourselves successful in the next 40 minutes if we cover, a deep dive on 3 broad topics around the around the SDGs. So we would want to talk a little bit about international cooperation. We touched on that with opening remarks. We also want to talk a little bit more on the just transition, and then a topic that's near and dear to me, women's economic empowerment and how you include women in this very, very important work. So those are the 3 broad topics that we're going to discuss in only 40 minutes. But first, I would like to give everybody on the panel here a chance to just give some introductory remarks, and we'll proceed from there. I'll start with you, Ms. Svenja.
I think when we look on SDG 7, we see that we still have a really long way to go to provide universal access to reliable energy supplies in line with the needs. We need 100% renewable energy, and we need 100% environmental friendly, climate neutral sources, and we need need more access to energy for everyone. And there are still 760 million people, nearly, that have no access to electricity. That's something that we need to take care of, and we need an enormous investment. And this investment that cannot be shouldered by the countries themselves. That it needs the industrialized countries to help. I think that is our responsibility, and that we have to discuss, and that we need to change. We need to change also the way we do it. You just mentioned we have to take women with us. There are such a lot of powerful women. We see Patricia here. She is one of the women. Linda, yourself are very engaged in energy questions. Secretary Kwarteng, UK is working for appointing more women in leadership positions. There is so much action, and I think we have to put that together. We need also the strong women for SDG 7, and there is a lot to do still.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's great to be here with you. Can everyone hear me? Is that clear?
Yeah, that's fine.
Good. I just wanted to say that it's fantastic that we can all be here in person, but as Svenja says, there's still, as we speak, more than 700 million people, 750 million people without access to electricity. That's 10% of the entire global population.
Yeah.
And as long as there are so many millions, hundreds of millions, without access to electricity, that should really focus our minds on the need to accelerate this transition. And for me, I think SDG 7 represents a huge opportunity to progress and to make sure that people actually do have access to modern amenities. But we've got to do this in a way that is sustainable. We can't simply just carry on as before and not think about the environment, the natural environment that we live in. Mm-hmm. And one of the great things that I was very pleased about in COP26 was that really it marked a great change in how we mobilize capital, how we mobilize finance, how we get the private sector engaged with this challenge. So we've got lots of new ambitions, lots of new targets. We also have lots of policies. And I think if we can honor some of the promises that we've made and we can deliver on the finance, I think we can meet SDG 7 in 2030. Mm-hmm. It's very challenging, but it's definitely within our grasp. And through that, we will be able to keep the 1.5 degrees alive. So there's plenty of challenge, plenty of opportunity, and we just have to stay very focused to get there. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you to the German government for convening this very timely discussion at this moment in time, and especially in the current environment that we are living in, where energy is really at the center of the attention. And energy has also been at the center of the discussion on climate change. I would like to add one figure to the number that Svenja and Secretary Kwarteng have already mentioned about the fact that 10% of the global population does not yet have access to electricity. Another figure that is very striking is that more than 40% do not have access to clean cooking facilities. So just imagine what that means in terms of health, in terms of the nutrition for the children, what kind of environment they are living in. At the same time, my main message is to stress that while there is a lot of concern, how are we going to achieve this universal access to clean, affordable energy, and at the same time address the challenges of climate change? We need to be really very confident about the fact that actually globally, we do have the means in order to achieve that. We have the technologies, we know how to do it. So the big challenge today is to have a massive dissemination of these clean technologies around the world. And that, of course, has to do with planning, with institution building in the countries, with the international community providing also support for building capacities in the countries, because a lot of this, of course, has to do with the developing world. In the developed world, this is not such an issue. Although I have to say, regarding clean cooking facilities, that is also a challenge in some developed countries. But their institutions are already established. The big issue is how to do this in the South, in the developing world. How to build those capacities, how to put in place the plans, and how to implement them, how to disseminate, how to make an accelerated and massive deployment of these technologies. That is the big challenge. And of course, the question of women, the role of women, and just by looking at the figure of 40% of the population not having access to clean cooking facilities indicates very clearly the very important role of women that they need to play. In some houses, men are also cooking, but I would say that normally the women are the ones that are the providers of the food for the family normally. It's more exceptionally the man is cooking, but normally it's the women. So over to you, and thank you for this invitation. It's an honor for me to be sharing this panel with you.
Thank you very, very much. Definitely very powerful words. And thank you very much, Patricia, for introducing a topic that's very near and dear to me personally and to those in Africa who understand the drudgery, who understand the pain, who understand the impact, the socio-economic impact of lack of clean, safe, affordable cooking fuel, right? So thank you very much for those. And thank you also for the other remarks, which kind of really brings us to start to do a deep dive in how to proceed, right? How do we proceed with today's topic in terms of bringing clean, safe, affordable, sustainable energy for all? Well, first, I'd like to bring in the audience and And let's answer the Slido question. And I have to say, this one is an easy one because every single panelist basically gave the answer to this question, which is quite serendipitous. And the Slido question is, if that can come up on the stage, how many people worldwide lack energy access? Then this is according to SE4All statistics. Is it 759 million? Is it 565 million? Or is it 385 million? That should be an easy one because that was repeated by every single speaker on stage today. I expect nothing less than 100% from you, audience. So while you're working on that, let us kind of move on to really our topic today. How do we proceed from here? And this is really a deep dive with you, Svenja, because you covered a lot of this in your opening remarks. How does Germany support that aim, right? Specifically, what role is your government in international cooperation in SDG 7 specifically?
We do that in two ways. The first is we have to do our homework. We have to phase out coal. We believe in new renewable energies, in 100% renewable energies, and we need to speed that up because of the war from Russia against Ukraine, because we are very dependent on gas, on oil, on coal from Russia, and we want to phase out that as soon as possible. And the second is we need international cooperation. We need to work together and we need to speed up the international work we do there because it is a worldwide problem. There are a lot of countries who are not able to deal with that by themselves. And so we need partnerships and we need strong partnerships, not partnerships who one of the people say, that is the way, there you have to go. Partnerships that are real partnerships, working together, putting the problems on the table, and then work together to solve them. And the industrialized countries, they need to give more money for that. And this, I don't know, I feel the finance minister in my neck, but I know that is what we need, and we need this international action, and we need to speed up that. And so I'm really happy that we have a signal from Glasgow, that we work together. And this example I put in my speech was South Africa. I think in this way, we need more partnerships. I really welcome the Energy Transition Campaign UK launched. I think that is really, really good to boost the process. We saw at the high-level dialogue on energy in September that the United Nations has the convening power to unite us and bring us together. And I think we need more of this action. We need more coming together, speed up what we are doing. And I think UN Energy can play a special role by working for coordination between the energy activities and energy agenda within the UN and its agencies, and the global high-level dialogue and energy, the energy roadmap. That is the vision, that is the guidance we have, and we have to speed up action on that.
No, thank you very much, Albert, for those remarks. They absolutely are very powerful. If we have time, I'd like to come back to you and ask, when we are criticized, when Germany is criticized that the phase-out is not fast enough, the phase-out of coal is not fast enough, I'd be curious to know, what your response is to that, if we have time at the end of in this talk. I'd like to pick up some of the themes that Svenja has raised there. The UK recently hosted COP26, where many action plans were designed, right? We have the Glasgow Climate Pact, the Glasgow Breakthrough Agenda, which also includes the power breakthrough. So how do you specifically support these plans, and what actions are you as a UK taking towards energy security both at home and worldwide?
So just specifically on the domestic agenda, we have a British energy security strategy which is coming out imminently. It'll be coming out probably next week or in the next few days. And that's something which is really trying to bring together not only the work that we've done internationally in terms of pursuing, driving the net zero agenda, but also is very specific to the situation we're in with respect to Russia, Ukraine. So oil independence, gas independence, all of these things require a range of renewables, which we've talked about, which does two things. It reduces dependence on potentially hostile powers and their hydrocarbons, but so it gives us a measure of security, but also helps us decarbonize, because these are renewable technologies. Svenja mentioned them in her speech. We've talked about hydrogen, we've talked about offshore wind, we've talked about onshore, we've talked about solar. But this is really the future, and it does two things. It gives us independence, and it also gives us decarbonization. So that's very much of our focus. As far as COP26 was concerned, that really demonstrated what Svenja was talking about. This is real partnership. That was the phrase she used. And all these breakthrough agenda, power breakthrough, that was all brought about by combining different countries in the way that Svenja has described. And that's what we're doing. That's why I'm here. That's why we're trying to convene lots of people together, not only to set ambitions, but as Svenja said, to help countries also actually achieve real change in this area. One area I think COP26 was very successful in was in finance. You know, you will remember the Copenhagen Pledge. That was 2009 for $100 billion. It took us 11 years, 12 years to really get people signed up to that. I was very pleased that in COP26 we did that, and the money will start being deployed in 2023. That's real commitment, but also backed up by action.
No, fantastic. No, so what we're hearing is the ingredients are there, the financing is there, the technology is there. We just have to deploy it, and deploy it very, very quickly. Thank you very much. I want to turn over to you, Patricia. As Executive Secretary of the UNFCCC, you have a tough job, because you have the job of steering 197 countries towards tackling climate change effectively. So how would you describe the overall commitment to advance the SDGs, and specifically, obviously, the topic on hand, the SDGs 7. Are there any areas where you would like to gear up the dedication? You know, this is your chance to call out and say, these are the spaces, and these are the countries, and this is what is needed to fill in the gaps towards tackling climate change. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Linda. And you know, it's hard, it's difficult. Our process is extraordinarily complex. I have worked on multilateral fora for most of my career, my professional life, and I have experienced working in many fields, but the field of climate change is really extremely complex. Why? Because it is cross-cutting, because we are talking about a deep transformation of societies, deep transformation of the economy. It is not about one or two decisions. It is about really transforming the system that we have currently functioning in all the countries, developed and developing. So therefore, it was really a very important achievement, what we managed to agree on in Glasgow. I have to say that if we look at the statements by the heads of state and governments, that over 120 who came to Glasgow that were there, the political level commitment is really present. We had heads of state and government expressing very clearly their demands, but also their commitment to make more efforts for this transformation, commitments to make more efforts to provide financing, acknowledgement of the fact that the 100 billion needed to be provided by 2020, and they had not yet been, they are not yet there. And in the energy field, all the nationally determined contributions, which are the national climate change plans, all of them talk about the energy transition. So again, the point that I was making before, energy is at the center of climate change, and energy is also at the center of finding a solution addressing effectively climate change. Now, Glasgow did manage to get the international community together to agree on scaling up clean power generation, energy efficiency measures, and for the first time, accelerating the phasing out of unabated coal and also the phasing out of inefficient subsidies for fossil fuels. This was the first time that in our process that was agreed. It was a breakthrough, and I think this is where we need to continue to put a lot of attention. And this transformation will require a lot of support, as I was mentioning before, to really deploy the solutions. Why would we ask a developing country to not use coal if that's their resource, if we do not provide them with the means and the support needed to have an alternative? So this is the big job that we all have to make in order to make progress. So this is where I think we need to put a lot of emphasis in the coming year and beyond.
Now, thank you very much. Powerful remarks. Yes, so the missing ingredient, political will. So that is in. So really, it is just a matter of, maybe not just a matter, but we really do have to move that ambition into action because the elements are in place. So for the next 10 minutes, I want us to now do a deep dive into a just transition, and I'm going to start with you, Kwazi. But first, please, for the sake of the audience, just give us a common understanding of what you think a just transition is, and then what your country is doing to ensure that that actually takes place.
I think when we consider the just transition, we've got to look at how transitions have happened in the past.
Yeah.
And very often they've been lopsided in the sense that benefits have accrued to a smaller number of people. And this transition has to be one which works for everybody. Because as you remarked earlier, this is a common heritage. The earth we live in belongs to everybody. And so a just transition has to include everybody so that we can have a more resilient, more sustainable energy and a more resilient, more sustainable life on this planet as a shared heritage, as a human, one human family. And I think transitions in the past have not reflected that. They've not respected people's independence. They've not respected people's dignity. And we all know about these in history, and even now, and we're determined in making this transition that it's not going to be like what things have been in the past or in the present. And it's very, very serious. It's a very, very serious commitment on all of us to be able to reach a resilient, sustainable future that captures everybody.
Fantastic. No, that absolutely makes sense. No, great. Patricia, I'm going to come to you next, and just picking up on that theme. We all know that the SDGs are interlinked. We know that achieving SDG 7 impacts quite a few of the other SDGs. So I'm just wondering which of the SDGs are you particularly keeping in mind to ensure the just transition?
Well, first of all, let me say that climate change impacts almost every SDG.
Correct.
If we talk about hunger, if we talk about education, health, clean air, clean water, economic opportunities, all of that is related to climate change. So, in fact, I was a member of the high-level panel who did the first report on the SDGs, and there was a very important discussion whether we should put climate change as a cross-cutting issue or as a separate SDG. At the end, we decided to do both. because we were worried that if we did not include one specific SDG on climate change, it would be overlooked. It would not receive sufficient attention. But there was very clear consciousness that, in fact, climate change has to do with all the different SDGs. Mm-hmm. We say that climate change is a threat multiplier. And in this regard, climate change, yes, it affects our ability to be able to achieve all of those SDGs. We have to, therefore, to recognize that addressing climate change and addressing SDGs is just one agenda. Yep. It is true that we have different fora where we address or where we concentrate on the specifics of each of them. But it is one agenda. It is really the development agenda. It's the agenda for economic opportunities. And I think this is the key to addressing it in a positive way. It is not about a burden. It is not about, something that is going to take us to a more difficult world. Yeah. And that has to do also with what Secretary Kwarteng was saying, a just transition. Yes, we need to take everybody on board. Yeah. If we talk about energy and the energy transition, yes, there will be some areas that will be affected. We need to help the workers be able to transition to new opportunities. Why? Because the oil and gas industry, if we talk about fossil fuels, or the coal industry, has a lot of people that depend on them. So it is not it is really in nobody's interest that those people are left behind. We need to take them along. We need to think about their families as well, the people that are really making a living from that industry. Yeah. But we need to take them along to a better world, better opportunities for them as well.
Now, thank you very much. Thank you very much. I'm going to come to you, Minister Svenja, with a little bit of an unfair question, because I want to drill down on events that are still unfolding, and yet I'm going to ask what your view is on how the Russian events are going to impact the global energy transition. Yeah.
The Russian aggression against Ukraine is in a phase where we really struggle in the world because of the COVID-19 pandemic. We don't discuss about that anymore, but there is still a worldwide pandemic. And in this pandemic, we see rising prices, really, really high rising prices on energy, also on food system, but we talk about energy here, about energy. So we have a very high level on energy prices. And with this war, these prices going up again. And that is really a problem for developing countries, because energy prices, they can't pay it anymore. And they are really, they are dependent on gas, on oil, and they need to pay the prices, and they don't have the money for that. So it is really, really a problem, particular in the developing countries. And so we need also to help on that, and it throws us back in all the things we are doing for years, what we see now. And so we need to enhance, we need to speed up the help and the transition Patricia mentioned before. So it is even more urgent with this war. It is even more urgent to transform the energy systems of the world, and it is even more urgent to realize that climate change is still here and that we still have to work on that. So making countries more resilient, helping that they are not so dependent on fossil fuels. That is the future, and we need to invest in that future. And it is also, I'm still hopeful that can be also the perspective for developing countries, because they have renewable energies. They have all the possibilities to grow up renewable energies, and if they have enough in new renewable energies to help in their country, they can also invest in storage, and we could help them to invest in green hydrogen, for example. And if they are able to produce green hydrogen for themselves, but in the future maybe also for the export, that will help developing countries to have also an economic perspective. And that is also interesting for industrialized countries because they need green hydrogen. So having this partnership, helping each other, is also an investment in the future.
No, thank you very much. Absolutely. You know, what you said really resonates with me because in my personal capacity, I work with grassroots in Kenya, and my area is in clean cooking fuel, so I really appreciated those remarks. And, you know, 100%, you know, a slight shift in gas prices has really pushed us back many, many years when we are trying to transition people away from, you know, unsafe and clean cooking fuel into new fuels. Now, $1, you know, a shift in the gas prices means food prices have gone up. So now people are making the choice. You know, am I going to eat or am I going to buy this clean solution that Linda Davis is promoting? You know, so 100%, you know, what we do here has this ripple effect that is quite unimaginable. And it is just an absolute, you know, honor that the leaders are actually recognizing these actions, because I do have, you know, the bad news from the area that I work in. But you know, let us keep moving on with our discussion on how to proceed. I presume we've all put in our answers to the Slido question, and we will reveal your opinion shortly. But now, again, a topic near and dear to me. We talked about women empowerment. This is our time to, you know, dig a little deeper into this particular topic, and maybe I'll ask you to answer this in just about 3 minutes, so we have a chance to do some concluding comments. And I'm going to start with you, Patricia. On International Women's Day, you mentioned that women and girls need to be empowered and need to be involved at all levels. That was a powerful statement that you made. How do you see women particularly impacted with SDG 7, and what specifically can we do to ensure that they are involved and included in a better way?
Well, as I mentioned before, I think one very clear example of how women are affected is the issue of the clean cooking. And while climate change affects everyone, literally everyone in the world, it does not affect everyone equally.
Yeah.
And that means that people in a vulnerable situation, and especially women and girls, are extremely affected. Like take the situation where you have a moment where there is drought, where there is water scarcity. So women are the ones that normally then, instead of walking for half an hour to get water for their houses, for their families, they need to walk maybe 3 hours or 4 hours. And many times what happens is, and you will know better than me about that, but many times what happens is then that girls are taken out of school because they are needed to help in the house.
Yeah.
If we think about this reality, and then we look at the framework of decision makers to address the different needs, having women in those tables that know, that are sensitive and that are really have deep knowledge of what the needs of women are, is absolutely crucial. Mm-hmm. If you have somebody deciding the policies that will be implemented, or the way that the plans will be made, that has no clarity, that has really this reality not in mind, it will not be taken into account. Also, it will not be taken into account to see women also as solution providers. They are the ones then that can provide the best way, the most efficient way to address those needs. So within our process, we have, the parties actually have decided a long time ago, already in 2012, that all delegations should have women included. The fact is that up to this moment, what we see is, yes, in many rooms, quite a number of women, but when we look at the groups of the lead negotiators, those who take decisions, the number of women reduces dramatically. So I think there needs to be a very conscious effort to comply with this commitment that was already made, and that needs to be made. I mean, I'm talking about delegations to the UNFCCC, but that needs to be made at every level of government, at every decision-making process, in private sector as well. There is a big, an important push for private sector, the boards of the big companies, to include women in their decision-making processes. It's not yet happening. Sometimes I do feel that in spite of being in the 21st century, we are still looking at realities that belong to the last century.
Exactly.
So I think there needs to be a very conscious effort in this regard. And to the argument that there are not enough women that have the experience, of course, if women are not given the opportunity, they will never get the experience.
Yeah.
But I can tell you, women are wonderful and they are capable.
Yes, yes. Yes. Fantastic. I just want to add a little bit of color in some of the comments that Patricia has mentioned. Very many people are surprised when they learn that the simple act of cooking actually causes quite a lot of death. You know, it's a direct correlation. You know, I think the WHO talks about 4 million people due to indoor house pollution. In my country of Kenya alone, it's about 25,000 women, mainly women and children, who die, you know, every single year simply because they cooked. You know, the load that you might see in Discovery Channel or Natural Channel of firewood on a woman's head, that's 52 kilograms. And the average that these women have to walk is about 7 kilometers. It's really unpleasant. Cooking for 1 hour in a smoky kitchen is the equivalent of smoking 4 packets of cigarettes a day. So this is a serious problem. This is a serious problem, and the just transition must indeed include them. Thank you very much for bringing that issue into the limelight. I appreciate that a lot. Yeah. So moving on to you, Ms. Svenja. Indeed, you know. So again, you've talked about this before. So I'm just going to give you an opportunity to expound on your comments around how women and youth can fit into the decision-making process that Patricia said must include women.
Yeah. I can just underline that, what Patricia said before, what you said before. I think it is time to have feminist foreign policy, to have a feminist policy in development, because we know from countless studies that show that hunger, that poverty go down and stability increase if women have equal responsibility. So bringing more respect, more rights and more resources to women, that is what needs to be done, and that needs to be in the center of our policy too. So I can just underline what Patricia said. It is time to to empower more women. They are half of the population. If we don't put them on the focus, we don't get forward. So we need also successful women for the energy transition. Yeah. And we see such a lot of heartwarming, successful stories in the world. We see such a lot of powerful women, and we need more of that. And that is what we, from the German side, want to do. We want a feminist development policy. We want to take care about that. We want to bring that forward, and I hope that we get a lot of with us to bring that forward, because it is important.
Yeah, Kwasi, your comments, please. I did ask we speak for 3 minutes, but we went over time, and I cannot interrupt a panel that's talking about women and energy transition. But Kwasi, please.
Look, I think your remarks were your testimony about the difficulties of women in particular cooking in large parts of the developing world, particularly in Africa and other places, I think really goes to the heart of the challenge. Because, you know, the hundreds of millions, I'm not going to give away the answer, but of the hundreds of millions of people who lack access to energy, as was pointed out, many of those people will be in households that are led by women, where women are providing food, providing disposable income such as there is. And so there's no way we can do that. There's no way we can reach these people without education. And particularly education of women. And that's why we are signatories in the UK to the Clean Energy Education and Empowerment for Women, C3E. I think that's really, really important. And that's why in Glasgow, we were committed to the Gender Action Plan. There's no way we can do this without, as I said, a just transition, everybody participating, but particularly in societies where women do have a huge part to play, bigger than men in many instances.
Indeed. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. So just, I think we all know the answer to this, but we will go to the results of our Slido question very, very quickly, and then I'll just ask for a quick 1-minute closing remarks, and that will mark the end of our panel, where we've discussed how indeed we proceed. So the Slido tells us that 91% got the answer correctly. I was expecting definitely more than that, but I will take 91%. 760 million people, 759 million people still lack access to clean energy in 2022, a number that really should get us motivated to do what we need to do in our little parts of the equation. So to close the panel, I'm really going to ask the panelists to speak in 30 seconds or less around. Okay, we'll do a minute, and really just a minute, and then to close the panel on how to proceed on SDG 7.
May I start? Please. Okay. I think this short discussion shows that energy transition will require enormous efforts from all countries, and we discussed that before, and we should see it as an investment in the future, and in the future with more prosperity, with more participation, with quality of life, and development is not possible without energy supply. So achieving SDG 7 is key to achieve all the other 16 Sustainable Development Goals. And so it is really an important point. And within the framework of the German G7 presidency, the German government is therefore putting a strong focus on the topic of just transition.
I think we've covered the subjects very, very well. I think SDG 7 is all about delivery. We had a great COP26, we'll have other COPs, but it's all about delivery. It's all about mobilizing finance, education, and also deployment. And I think the 2020s will be marked by an incredible movement in all these areas. And I think we can hit the targets. I'm very confident of that.
Fantastic.
Thank you. The message I would very much hope that you will take with you from this conversation is that achieving SDG 7 and addressing climate change is possible. And actually, it brings an opportunity for everyone. It's not easy. Yes, nothing this important is easy. But we are the generation that has the opportunity to make a turning point in history and in the well-being of humanity. So if we come all together.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much.